Hello, bonjour. I know this isn't very exciting. I'm in my car, but it's because I'm about to film something where I can't use my hands because I gotta use these. I had surgery 3 weeks ago and I've been on crutches for 3 weeks, and I got 3 weeks more to go on those crutches. And a couple days after my surgery, my landlord at Origins Parkour let me know that the elevator is going to be broken. And if you know, Origins Parkour is located on the 3rd floor. So I have 5 flights of stairs to go up now, 10 stairs each. Let's do it. Last one. So this all started at the end of last summer, and to give you a bit of perspective, it's now the end of May right now, and I had my surgery in the first week of May. The bail at first glance isn't anything special. I've seen people bail like this before, and usually when it happens to other people, I just think that they're a total noob, because up until this point, I've been doing parkour for a long time, and this had never happened to me before. Now, why I would usually see this as a noob bail is pretty simple, right? I mean, you missed your target. So if your precision target is here, and your foot should be here so that the ball of your foot hits the edge and stops, if you're several inches beyond that because your accuracy is not very good, you're gonna slip. On this particular challenge, I was doing a tack back off the tree, and I had just got both feet up to the edge, bounced it back, and figured that on this attempt, I was gonna make it. So camera roll, let's go. As I tack back, I'm putting a little bit of extra juice into it, and I realize as my head whips around that I'm no longer going to the spot I was going at. I'm actually veering off a little bit more to the left, and as you can see, there's a shorter wall and a taller wall. So I'm a little bit distracted, kind of seeing 2 walls that I'm aiming at, and my feet split kind of instinctively for a crane to kind of push myself away from the wall. At least that's what I'm assuming happened. It was all happening really fast. So obviously you can see my foot misses the target because I'm way too high and I'm not actually fully focused on where I'm going. That foot slips out and I fall back. And I kind of just start to laugh it off initially because this is a really silly bail and it's never happened to me before, and I didn't hit my head or anything really. I feel no pain right away until a couple seconds pass by, and all of a sudden I realize my knee hurts a lot. I cannot walk. I cannot stand on the leg. So I go to the hospital and they do an x-ray, and then the next day I get a CT scan, and the day after that I go to an orthopedic clinic. At the clinic, they do a physical assessment of my knee, look at the CT scan, and decide that there's nothing wrong with it and that I probably banged my knee against the wall, so it's labeled a contusion and they send me on my way. So the rest of the story goes on for months as I try to recover this thing. I go back to the clinic. They reluctantly order me an MRI. When I get the results of the MRI, it shows a meniscal bucket handle tear, which at the time was really good news because it's a simple procedure where they can just cut it out. When I woke up from my surgery, the doctor had bad news. A tear in my cartilage he felt needed repair, and he did a procedure that involved drilling into the bone. Microfracture is a type of articular cartilage repair, and this is more or less what the cartilage of your knee looks like. This is what that cartilage would look like if you had a tiny tear in it. And the way the procedure works is a doctor will take a tiny camera inside your knee to take a closer look at that tear. The next step is smoothing out the edges of the tear, and then they will take some tiny tools to create a bunch of tiny holes in the bone. These holes will then create some bone marrow bleeding, which will form a clot. And inside this clot, we got some cells floating around. So these cells are floating around and they're wondering, what the heck should we do with ourselves? And I like to think that the smartest of the cells eventually makes its way over to the cartilage wall and says, hey, this is cartilage, why don't we become that? And the rest of the cells are super down. They're like, whoa, yeah, let's do it. And so they get to work to create a new piece of fibrocartilage inside the knee, which is a very delicate process, and we need to make a nice environment for that piece of fibrocartilage to develop. And the first stage of that development is 6 weeks of no weight bearing. Instead of weight bearing, the first 6 to 8 weeks involve bending and straightening the knee constantly like this. Some people in the past actually go home with what's called a controlled passive motion machine, which essentially just bends your knee for you. And they sit in that for 8 to 10 hours a day. 998, 999, 1,000. I don't know if we're gonna measure swelling, because
I think we should.
Yeah, I think that's number one. It's funny because with the initial first week, I was elevating this all the time and icing it all the time because swelling was number one.
Yeah.
And then found out I had to be moving it more. And so now movement has become number one.
Sensitivity-wise, my measuring isn't going to be perfect every time, but this gets you a 0.5 centimeter thicker at joint line. For what it's worth, it's not that much different, but.
Oh, it's thicker than last week?
Yeah.
Yeah, I kind of thought so.
So we're just going to dig in here, make everything a little bit supple, unload the joint a bit for the time being. Going to dig into biceps femoris, just list off fancy names for hamstrings. Semitendinosus, semimembranosus.
I should be probably rolling out on my own too.
Yes. The idea is just to get some compression of the capillary beds, a little bit more blood flow into the tissues, and just prep it. Keeping your little knee terrarium healthy and in the environment that's most likely to heal. So if you're up and you're kind of moving around in your crutches, coaching most of the day, it's a little bit hard, like you said, when the priority is not to contain the swelling. I think you've done a really good job regardless. But if you can continue on as good as it was in the first 2 weeks, we want to think about that gap between now 3 weeks post to 6 weeks. How do we train you so that when you get the go-ahead, you can just get rid of crutches and you're walking in a totally normal gait pattern with no, it's going to be a little different, but how do you put yourself again in the right environment, thinking about the terrarium where everything is sort of engaged and active and it's not totally lost. So you think about the pool, you can deconstruct what you're trying to do. You've got some support. So if you think about the ledges here, stable on the right leg, left leg, we just want to go into flexion, extension. You want to go through cycles. You're not going to be stabilizing on this side, at least until you're at the pool a couple times. You think about week 5, then you can start getting into spaceman walking, get the leg moving, and then even the compression of the water around. So the pressure drop, more water that's around you is a little bit like wearing a compression sleeve. And that's going to help with your swelling as well.
This is another thing I'm trying to do almost every day, which is using an EMS device. And that's just to try to stimulate some blood flow and also prevent the muscle from atrophying entirely, because as I've mentioned, I cannot load the joint, so we have to get some activity somehow, and the EMS is a great way to do that. This one was pretty expensive, but you could get a cheaper one on Amazon for $50 or less, and it would still do the trick, albeit it probably would not last as long. And I'm just trying to show you everything that I'm doing for this recovery, because when I look up microfracture surgery on YouTube, I can find videos about the procedure itself, but I couldn't find any videos showing athletes actually going through the recovery process. So the most important activity I have to use to recover the knee is passive range of movement. So whenever I'm sitting down, which is as often as possible, I'm flexing the knee using some sort of assistance from my hands or my other leg. Also using EMS every day, exercises for my ankle, and for other exercises I have to get more creative. I'm also doing upper body workouts, as you've already seen. I'm eating well, and before my surgery I started loading up on supplements, so I'm taking vitamin D3, fish oils, and glucosamine. I can use an exercise bike with zero tension a little bit, but the range of motion is a bit much to be doing all the time, so the passive range of motion with limited range of motion puts less stress on the joint. And I think that's about it. So if you want to see what the heck happens to me subscribe to the channel, or if you want to see people doing parkour that aren't injured, you could also subscribe to the channel for that. If you enjoyed today's video, give me a thumbs up, and if you have any questions about anything regarding my recovery, leave me a comment and I'll try to get to it in the next video. Stay chiseled.